It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. I'm going to start here in Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu has approved a sweeping reconstitution of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited Board, removing the chairman, Chief Pius Kyari, and the group chief executive officer, Malam Mele Kolo Kyari. A statement on Tuesday by presidential spokesperson Bayo Ononuga said the president also removed all other board members appointed with Ojulari and Kyari in November of 2023. The new 11-man board has Bashir Bayo Ojulari as the group CEO and Amadu Musa Kida as the non-executive chairman. President Tinubu also appointed Adedapo Shego, who replaced Umaru Isa Ajia, as the chief financial officer last November, to the new NNPCL board. All the appointments are effective from April the 2nd. Well, of course, we have an expected shake-up of the NNPCL happening. I feel like a lot of people were wondering when it was going to happen. Kyari is out, Ojulari is in. There have been some murmurs on the internet about the fact that the new GCEO is Yoruba, but of course he is still a northerner because he is from the north central region of the country, and the chairman, of course, is from the northeastern region, Kida being from, I believe, Borno State. But I do believe that, in this shakeup, we have seen a lot of oil and gas stalwarts and experts, people who were in-house and not necessarily in NNPC, coming from private companies, from major IOCs and NOCs, to, spearhead the change in the NNPC. And so for some people, particularly in the industry, this might be a good sign. Maybe instead of getting people just coming through the NNPC system or the NNPCL hierarchy, you're getting new blood from outside who have worked for international corporations and major corporations. Even the new general counsel, I believe, is Adesu Adozie, who was a general counsel at Shell. So we have people who have storied careers joining the NNPCL right now. However, this is a time where oil prices have dropped to the lowest level since President Tinubu was inaugurated. We have an international shakeup in the oil and gas industry, and we had the troubles in rivers, or rivers of troubles, as we've previously called it. And so the role NNPCL is going to play in Nigeria's future, particularly in our forex, well,
that will be interesting. I think for me, I'm looking at what the officials from the presidency have said, even if lots of them have spoken on the basis of anonymity. It basically speaks to wanting people outside who are apolitical. That's the best way to put it. And it's raised a lot of questions as well on the social media and mainstream as to whether or not the predecessors now, we would call them, were truly political or apolitical in their affairs. But like you rightly said, these are people who are major members from Renaissance to Shell, like you rightly mentioned. And, it's also the tone that this removal has come with. I think it raises a lot of questions as to how we transition power in Nigeria. For instance, a particular statement says, look at them. Every one of them is capable. They are core industry professionals, real industry experts who know the industry inside out. They are not politicians. This is the first time we have an entire cast of technocrats. So that speaks to how we appoint leaders into this position and also how we remove them. On some platforms, it's been the butt of jokes. On some others, they've taken the opportunity to highlight the strengths and the weaknesses, that we've seen within Mele Kyari's time as the GCEO of NNPCL, and also highlighting his strengths and a lot of the work that he has done. But we've also seen on other platforms how this has been a moment to really highlight what he did not do. But I think it's also important to note that the central theme here is the responsibilities that from Ojulari and everybody else involved would have to take on. The fact that they've mentioned, the presidency has stated that they're looking by 2030 producing 3 million barrels of oil per day. And between now and 2027, it must stabilize at 2 million barrels per day. And the truth is, if you think about it, we do have the infrastructure to handle this. So it also boils down to liaising with all sectors of this, from the infrastructure, the storage capacities, the companies that have these facilities, to make sure that everybody is in line with this. The presidency also mentioned our refineries and the blocks as well. Which ones are producing, which ones are not producing, find out what the issues are.
Have we hit 2 million barrels per day?
They're saying between now, we haven't. They're saying between now and 27.
Okay.
Between now and 2027, they want us to stabilize at 2 million barrels. We haven't. So they're saying that
even the 2025 budget clearly stipulates, what you need to do. You need to do 2 million barrels.
Exactly. So what I'm saying now is...
We're in April already and we're not close to it.
That's exactly what I'm saying with Ojulari. That's what I'm saying in terms of responsibilities. That as he is coming in, the responsibilities are mounting. And I'm really keen on the blocks. When the presidency officials mentioned...
Oil blocks?
Yes, the oil blocks, saying that which ones are functional, which ones are not. Poking those holes, looking into the politicizing of these things as well. So I guess time will tell. We will see how well they are able to perform in their respective responsibilities. Yeah. But it's just been such a row on social media. I think he was removed, just let the man go in peace without all the...
Time will tell, but we haven't got, a lot of time to play.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
When it comes to this. But I agree with you that, and that is where that Ojulari comes, with a number of strengths, given his trajectory, given his experience as an engineer and in core oil and gas industry. What will be required will be that many people will not want to see a continuation of some aspect of Kyari legacy. A legacy of half-truths and half-measures and just not being, on top of the game in terms of hitting the very high notes that this year's budget set for itself. And people will look at Kyari's removal, not just from the point of the fact that he clocked 60 in January. Many people will argue that it hasn't got anything to do with his age because it's a limited liability company. But because, as has been reported, we found Kyari basically leading a management team that has been going round and round and round in circles. So that's not the kind of legacy that Ojulari should continue. If Asiwaju could remove a very close ally like Chief Kyari as the chairman, who hasn't even spent 2 years, it means that it looks to me like he's a lot serious about the sort of deliverables that should come, from the NNPC. Not the legacy of not, giving full disclosure to Nigerians, particularly where it concerns Port Harcourt refineries, Warri refineries. Where are we? What is their contribution? What has happened to the correct letters of the turnaround maintenance and the restructuring of those refineries that former President Buhari signed in 2021? By now, 3 of them ought to be up and running. But then all we have seen so far, is an aspect of, Port Harcourt 1 and Warri reportedly dealing in diesel, dealing in kerosene. But what happened to the actual amount that was paid? And when you challenge the lies and the half-truths of NNPC, part of what Ojulari should watch out for is not the legacy that we use public money to go and be arranging tout and area boys to come and protest against the television station for speaking truth to power.
Are you saying for a fact that they did that? I remember when that happened just outside.
No, I'm just
I think that was the day before.
Not to continue.
And also the internet
what
influencers.
Absolutely.
I think there are some influencers there that maybe we shouldn't
should
fund
not be
again.
the direction that Mr. Ojulari should take. But of course, a lot of people believe in him. Let's see how he pans out, but he's got his job cut out for him. Right.
Well, in the meantime, Edo State Governor Monday Okpebolo was in Kano State on Monday, where he assured the families of the 16 people killed in Urumi that justice will be served on the perpetrators. A rights correspondent, Ayo Adenaye, reports on Okpebolo's condolence visit to the families of the victims.
The convoy of the governor of Kano State and his Edo counterpart arrived in the waiting hands of the aggrieved villagers. Placards bearing inscriptions such as, "We need justice for our people. No nation can develop without justice. And hunters are not killers," were visibly held up by the people. Of the 16 persons reportedly killed in Urumi, Edo State, 7 were from this community, which is predominantly made up of hunters. While addressing the crowd in Hausa, Governor Abba Yusuf appealed to them not to take the law into their hands. He, however, outlined 3 key demands from the people.
Our
people who were killed must get justice. Secondly, the perpetrators must be arrested. The first law, and lastly, the families of the victims should be compensated. We are really saddened by the killings of the people. The step we want the Edo government to take is that they should put an end to such occurrence.
The emotional governor of Edo State, Monday Okpebolo, spoke in Hausa, recalling his early days in Kano and the kindness shown to him by the people of the state. He assured the community that justice will be served, revealing that 14 individuals connected to the crime have been arrested.
My people, I appeal to you over the unfortunate incident. God knows everything. God gives and takes. The people will get justice. So far, 14 persons have been arrested and they are with the police.
Undoubtedly, the visit by the governor of Edo State will help to calm the rising tension and avert a potential reprisal.
I will just take that report, which is beautifully done, from just how it ended. There's definitely been the fear of a reprisal, or what I would say a retaliation, as to what happened in Uromi, Edo State, to the people who were traveling, and they had the hunters who were traveling and had hunting guns. And I'd say that everything that has happened ever since then definitely speaks to different ways that we're seeing the stakeholders involved in this, from the governor, to the security chiefs, trying to avoid that situation from happening and make sure it doesn't happening. And just like we rightly said, our hearts go out to the families of the people who whose loved ones were killed in the most scary way possible. Earlier this week, or I think it was last week, where we had Liboros Oshoma, and we spoke about the illegal vigilante that was involved in this, whereas this is a vigilante group that is not even recognized by the government. And we also highlighted the security lapses that could have led to this, because this is a vigilante that clearly was stationed on the roads and the people recognized and allowed to continue. So it was something that was ongoing, and at no point in time was there any security official or police officer called to say, see what is happening here, or let's. So there's a lot of gaps in the entire situation that just speaks to existing security issues, and specifically in this area that is of Edo State, Uromi, that I think, apart from the condolence visits, is something that the governor definitely needs to pay special attention to, so this doesn't happen again.
It will need to, but I do commend Governor Okpebolo for that visit. I thought that was, strategic. It was thoughtful. I also like the fact that he spoke, in Hausa to the crowd. That's first-class PR, in managing crisis, and I commend him, for that. Like Kachi said. When all this is settled, there are so many things, that the government at the federal and at the state levels will look into. I believe, of course, that Edo State, together with Kano State government, will be involved in the second part of the demands of the people, which will be to compensate, the families of those who were unfortunately killed in that barbaric manner. The first part of what they are demanding, of course, is very crucial. Let justice prevail. Bring them to account, those who will be arrested. I know that about 14 people have been arrested, but of course they will have to go through the entire gamut of the law, so that innocent people are not unjustly, punished. But like I said, after all this, there are specific issues that we need to address, so that it won't just be Uromi today. It could turn to Benue, where we're hearing of 50 people, 52 people and things like that, the next day, or Undo, or Ogun State, or Borno. It is important. It will also be very important to take a close look at the way that we deal with each other. Who are the set of people that we call hunters? And what sort of movement, do they engage in? What sort of arms do they carry? What sort of, authorizations do they have? So that we can, people can be well guided.
Yes.
When something like this happens the next time. It is important to address such things.
It's definitely important. I really like that you brought up that you hope it will not be other states, and you brought up Benue. In Benue State, over, I think, 2,600 people have died recently. That is more than we're seeing in Boko Haram territory. Thousands of people dying in one state is a serious issue. In Plateau State in the last week, I think the death toll from the attacks in Plateau State has now reached about 60 or at least over 50. What we're seeing across our country is serious insecurity. And when we talk about this, because honestly, my heart truly breaks for the Hausa and the Hausa hunters who also have to deal with insecurity where they are, which is part of why they're moving further down south to hunt because of the insecurity, the banditry, and the kidnapping, right? And we're looking at serious resource challenges in Nigeria. A lot of this is over land. You have cattle herdsmen versus farmers. We're seeing the videos on social media. We're seeing the stories in the news. And for me, personally, I do not believe it's the Edo State government that should be paying for the compensation to the family. I believe it's the federal government, because I believe this is unless the federal government does allow, the state police bill has passed the House of Representatives, passed second reading. We've had calls for state police. We've had calls to improve the security apparatus of states. But unless the federal government allows for that, then this is federal government failure, because the police is under the federal government, the military is under the federal government, and we're seeing this happen in multiple states. And I don't think it sets a proper precedent if the Edo State government is responsible for this. I have to give credit where credit is due. The way that the governor, Monday Okpebholo, comported himself, the statement he released on social media was very thoughtful and was very important, because he's like, I'm not going to the north to beg. I'm not standing against my people, but it's very important for me to make sure that there's no reprisal attacks, that there's no further violence. And preventing further violence was the most important thing to him in this situation. And I have to give him credit for doing that, because so far we have not seen further violence. But we are seeing violence across different states in the country. We're seeing violence between people who are cattle herdsmen and people who are local farmers. And unless the federal government comes up with a structural solution, people are going to keep dying.
Absolutely. Well said, Adesua. All right, we move on. Despite the ban on political rallies and the imposition of curfew, thousands of supporters turned out to welcome the suspended senator from Kogi Central, Natasha Akpoti. Addressing her supporters in Hima, she accused Senate President Godswill Akpabio of silencing her at the National Assembly, leading to her suspension. Our Rice correspondent, Frederick Odimayo, reports.
24 hours before arriving at her country home in Oke by helicopter, the Kogi state government had imposed a ban on political rallies, while the local government chairman in Senator Udwan's constituency had enforced a curfew restricting public movements. Speaking to a large crowd in her hometown of Ihima, Senator Akpoti explained that her recent trouble stemmed from speaking out against bad governance in the country.
The reason why I have been persecuted so much in the past 1 month is because I dared the bad, corrupt system. I refuse to do things the way they usually play politics. I refuse to be silenced. As I worked diligently, as I brought the dividends of democracy to you, I created enemies among some of my colleagues. There are some that felt I subjected them to ridicule. They told me, Natasha, your empowerment, by your empowerments, you're making our constituents insult us. So I kept on apologizing to them.
She vowed that any effort to recall her from the National Assembly would fail, asserting her determination to continue fighting for the people of Kogi Central.
On the 12th of March, Akpabio spoke to Governor Dodo to recall me. But he told him to be impossible because the masses are with her, the people are with her. But Akpabio was not satisfied he then sent for Yaya Bello. And it was actually Senator Asukwo from Cross River that drove Yaya Bello from Hilton Hotel. I was informed of everything. And when I got to know, hold on, the meetings was in two folds. He told him to commence my recall and that he was going to fund it. Of course, monies changed hands that night. The second thing he told him was that he should try and kill me. I didn't make this public, but I wrote to the IG of police. And Akpabio told Yahaya Bello, I am saying, standing by what I've said. He told him that he should make sure that killing me does not happen in Abuja, it should be done here. So it will seem as if it's the people that killed me here. I didn't make that public, but we did notify the security agencies of that.
Senator Udwanha also appealed to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to remain impartial, emphasizing that the world is closely watching the outcome of the recall process. Frederick Odimayo, Arise News, Kogi.
That was quite a performance, wasn't it? From Senator Natasha, who is now gradually turning into the, heroine in all this, brouhaha, within the National Assembly. I think that there are a few issues, even though we learned, of course, that there is a court order now asking herself and the Senate President, to stop granting interviews. But if we stick strictly to a homecoming rally, and the arrival, by a chopper and everything, I think even if you have issues with what some people might consider as Natasha's excesses, in quote, you can't deny the fact that there's a bit of strategy, in how she's prosecuting this battle with not just the Senate President, but with the leadership of the National Assembly. Of course, we saw drama. There was a bit of politics. But was there carelessness, given the sort of allegations that she has thrown against certain individuals, the Senate President himself, the former governor of Kogi, naming names in a manner that people might feel that it's a bit heavy and weighty when you start, when we are going beyond accusing an individual of sexual harassment, but then you are now moving to the level that this individual actually tried to mastermind my assassination. Those are weighty things. Like people have said about the harassment thing, it will require some, proving, particularly if the gentleman or the gentlemen involved, whose names were mentioned, go to court. Maybe we shouldn't have been here at this juncture at all if the crisis had been sensibly managed. But obviously, it wasn't managed. We're here. She's still suspended. She's gaining momentum. She's speaking her truth. But then she's also saying things that can get people worried if she's not able to provide evidence and clear her name. Thankfully, she has dared the people mentioned to go to court, sue me, she has said, and we heard that the Senate President, might just be considering that. What will be her future politically? I think that everybody can see now that this is not a woman that you can put down. This is not a woman that you can whimsically rubbish. But at the same time, the question of how law will come in when you make certain allegations would be a totally different, ball game. I commend her, her courage in pursuing that which she believes in, even if it looks like it's in defiance of the law of the land by Kogi State to say that, we're banning rallies, we're doing all this. But at the same time, what will be important is that while we condemn those who are trying to lord it over her, maybe there are ways that she can communicate grievances, particularly when it borders on libels and slanders and everything. But she's not a novice in the game, and by the way, she's also a lawyer.
Yes, she's definitely a lawyer, and I think that her lawyering came into view when we saw her, when they said no convoys, and so she came in a helicopter, and they said no public gathering, so she had the gathering in the home or in the land that they owned. You know, you see that lawyer rationale coming in, or the reasoning coming in some of the activities you did, and I really appreciate that you said that she has shown more than anything that she's not going to be somebody who will be trampled upon and pushed aside. And considering the level of pushback that she's had to face, as we said, not just from the Senate President, but the Senate leadership. We saw the Deputy Chief Whip on the same table speaking about herself and her children or her private matters. We've seen the same from the Senate leader, Senator Bamidele. We've seen consistent, from the Senate leadership that she's had to face different things coming from the Senate, which she will at some point possibly have to return to now that INEC has said that the recall attempt has failed, unless they attempt another successful recall. Once her suspension is over, or if a court lifts the suspension, she's going to go back to the red.
Apologizes as they demanded.
Yes, she will go back to the red chamber. But I think we can see, at least from this situation that she in Kogi Central, that I do not think an apology is going to come anytime soon. And she did say that she does not want to apologize, not in terms of her behavior, but because she did say that she believed that she was being sexually harassed by the Senate President, and she does not think it sets a good precedent for women if, the victim is apologizing to the accused. As well, we haven't been able to even see an investigation come from the National Assembly in terms of this particular issue. So this is something that has yet to be investigated. And as well, the Senate President has actually yet to fully addressed. He did speak about it once on the floor of the Red Chamber, but as you said, now there is allegedly an injunction, banning interviews from the both of them. I do think that what we're seeing from Senator Natasha, particularly the response from younger people on social media, is that some people feel that she's maybe rising as like a phoenix from the ashes as some sort of opposition leader, because I think it's also important to remember that she's a member of the PDP. She's a freshman senator. She is an opposition legislator from Kogi State. Even within the state governor is APC, the former governor is APC. And so we might be seeing a new type of opposition in our politics, particularly on the federal level. But I mean, she definitely has a battle ahead of her, and it seems like she's going to continue.
I like what you said just while that video was playing. She's setting fire to the rain, literally, with what she did. I think it also speaks to what she said about her rising as a phoenix. That's how it's put, right? So I think for me, what I even find most interesting in all of this is the court barring her from granting interviews as long as the case is ongoing. Of course, we know that generally, the Constitution says cases can be held. Cases actually should be held as a matter of public affair, in the sense that there's specific cases that can be withheld, when it involves persons under the age of 18 or matters of national security. I'm not sure if this is a case of national security. Of course, we also do not run a jury system in Nigeria. We run bench trials. So if it was a matter where perhaps there would be a jury that might be influenced by the opinions of social media, it will be understandable. So I find it interesting that the court has barred both, not like Senator Pabi was really doing any interviews, if we're being very honest. She was the one that was granted the interview. So I find it really interesting that the court will bar them from granting any press interviews when it's right there in the Constitution that, these things should be. Not only were they barred from making interviews, but that the proceedings of the court should also not be streamed across, news platforms or social media. So in essence, this has become a private case, and it just, again, raises those questions as to whether or not that should even be the case and why. But we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes, absolutely.
We'll see how it goes.
Kogi is interesting these days.
It's always interesting. We've had Senator Dino Milai, we've had Yahaya Bello. Kogi is I think it's a very interesting place.
That's cool. All right. U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to impose a new tariffs on all goods entering the U.S. is a major blow to the world economy. European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen has said. Her comments echo those of a number of other countries, including China, which has responded by slapping a retaliatory 34% tariffs on all imports from the United States from April the 10th. The words of warning came in the wake of Trump's announcement of a universal 10% tariff on all imports into the U.S. from April 5. About 60 countries will also be hit with steeper tariffs from April 9. Trump said the measures were payback for unfair trade policies, adding that he has been very kind in his decisions.
President Trump's announcement of universal tariffs on the whole world, including the European Union, is a major blow to the world economy. I deeply regret.
All right, Trump and tariffs. Everybody's affected, isn't it? Even Nigeria. 14%.
14% on Nigeria, which is honestly, we have it good compared to some of our brothers, particularly in Southern Africa.
What do we charge Americans? What tariffs do we have on export to America, to the US?
So we tariff different goods differently. And I don't think like Nigeria's relationship with America is like a great one to be able to really say this is tariff we charge. I feel like you have, for example, Canada and Mexico who are part of the AMCA, the trade agreement that replaced NAFTA, that Trump signed into law in 2020, came into effect in 2020. Trump was the person who negotiated this tariff deal. And most goods from Canada and Mexico into America are tariff-free. You have some specific exemptions like dairy products, butter, milk, but most goods have no tariffs, right? And you now have Trump saying, oh, they're charging us this many tariffs, and so we're going to do this. I would say that the most fascinating thing is that the two countries that have no tariffs, Russia and North Korea, and also, Vatican, the Vatican City. Russian trade with America is not zero. Even maybe he's using it, holding it as a trump card, but Russia's trade with America is bigger than a lot of other countries which have been tariffed. We see Lesotho, for example, in Southern Africa, having a 50% tariff. I think they are the highest. Yeah. And that's how people have been talking about the fact that this has to do with trade deficit. Now, most of what does Lesotho export? Diamonds. America doesn't have a diamond industry to protect. But I think for me, because I always have to focus on how does it affect us on the continent, and particularly how does it affect our growth. We have seen some ways that a Trump can be beneficial, whether it's because of he's dismantling the American hegemony or the American state in his own way, whether it is because he doesn't care about climate change, and so now our our energy transition can be on a more equitable terms because he doesn't care about the climate or green energy, even though that still affects us. But here we are seeing the ways that a Trump can very negatively affect us on the continent. So we have oil prices at a low. We have so many stocks falling. We have the dollar falling, which would have been good for some people, but for us, if that's what we're getting our crude money in, it's not good for the dollar to fall for us. So, we're seeing, at least in Nigeria and across the continent, free trade is imperative. In the same time that Trump is doing his tariffs, we have the AES, the Sahel states, also coming up with new tariffs for other West African states, I believe a 0.5% levy, which literally doesn't make any sense. They are landlocked countries. But we're seeing these issues regionally.
See how ECOWAS will
respond to that. But we're seeing that if we have, regional tariffs coming up, Trump tariffs coming up, this makes everything more expensive. Your cars, your laptops, your phones, your raw materials, even if you want to produce in Nigeria.
Consumers will bear the brunt of it all.
Consumers bear the brunt of it all. And we're already in a cost of living crisis, I think, even not just in Nigeria, but for us particularly here, we're dealing with inflation, we're dealing with a lot of hard things. And so these Trump tariffs, he set the world in, he enjoys the chaos, he enjoys the theater, he enjoys bringing out his board and saying, look at this number, everyone is talking about Trump. I guess I can't believe how many times in one day you can talk about Trump. On the same day, he fired like one of the national security advisors or something. But, these things, though, they do have real implications. And the last time, I believe, America was in a trade surplus was the Great Depression. Trade surplus does not mean good.
That's true. Wow. Kachi, anything on that? I just find it interesting that in all this, as bad, on the surface as it might seem, one thing that you can't deny in all this is that Trump is doing practically everything that he promised that he will do, everything that he campaigned that he will do. You might want to pull in the fact that even a number of Democrats in America, have supported one form of tariff or the other, in the past. Bernie Sanders, Nancy Pelosi, But then for him to now be seized, like we witnessed in Nigeria, by the spirit of courage, to announce this sort of,
Liberty Day.
Liberation Day.
Liberation Day. That's very cool.
That's a strange kind of trump card. Let's see how it goes. But, the market is not smiling in America at the moment.
Not at all.
And Mr. Trump is playing golf somewhere.
Yeah,
in Florida.
instead of also receiving, I believe, some veterans who had passed, the veterans
Sadly,
who and JP Morgan,
yes.
and I think JP Morgan has said America is likely to enter a recession in 2025.
And then they will come out of it.
Well, that's a wrap on the week that was. But just before our guest, let's bring you up to date with a couple of stories making the rounds. We begin from the United States that we just spoke of, where a federal judge has ordered the return to the country of a Salvadoran migrant who was mistakenly deported last month to a notorious prison in El Salvador. Kilma Abrego Garcia, 29, who was living in the eastern state of Maryland, was among a group of undocumented migrants who were flown to El Salvador by the Trump administration on March 15. The Justice Department lawyers admitted the court filings that Abrego Garcia, who was married to a U.S. citizen, had been deported due to an administrative error.
All right, the first cardinal to be defrocked by the Pope over allegations of sexual abuse has died in the United States, a senior U.S. churchman said on Friday. Theodore McCarrick, the former Archbishop of Washington and the most senior American prelate in the Catholic Church to face claims of abuse, has died in the state of Missouri at age 94, the New York Times reported, citing a Vatican statement. His death was also confirmed by the current Archbishop of Washington, Cardinal Robert McElroy. After allegations of historical misconduct emerged in 2018, a Vatican probe found he had assaulted a teenager 5 decades earlier. He was also suspected of other sexual assaults against minors and young men.
And back here in Nigeria, the death toll in the latest killings in Plateau State has risen to 52. This increase follows the discovery of 40 more bodies in the last 2 days as search and rescue operations are continuing. On Wednesday, gunmen invaded 5 communities in Boko's local government area, killing villagers. Now, the state government says that it has arrested some suspects in connection with the killings. The Plateau State government has condemned the killings and called for calm in the region. It called the killings a setback to the progress made by security agencies in maintaining order in the affected areas. That's awful news. We spoke about Plateau State earlier as well as Benue State. But that is where we draw the curtains close on updates from this week.